I'm Ben, I live Old Road and I'm a grief recovery method specialist. I'm also a counsellor over there. So my wife Nicola and I, that's not Nicola, and I moved to Burntisland about a year ago. We have two grown-up children, better off flying the coop, so we moved over here and we love it. So I just want to say how grateful I am that you all come tonight, because it takes a lot of courage to admit when you have a need. And it's a cold November night, so you have every excuse to stay at home. So it's taken a lot of courage for you to come this evening to be a part of this. I think tonight will be very special. It doesn't matter to me how many people are here. It's the impact that we can have on each other that really matters. So what I thought I'd do is I'd talk for about 4 or 5 minutes, and then maybe we'd break for a cup of tea, and then I'll do another 30, and then we could maybe have questions at the end if you want to be wrapped up well before 9. Okay, we get home to the kids. Yeah, of course. But like I say, I really want to encourage you and thank you for taking the time to come out, especially the local councillor. That's above and beyond. Thank you. When people look at the title of what I am, a grief recovery method specialist, they don't often see past the word grief. They think, oh, there's grief, help with my grief. Well, we are about grief, but we're also about recovery, not just about grief. There's lots of talking, like you can go and talk about grief, and maybe you get some relief over years and years and years, but this is an evidence-based program that really helps the griever to move through their grief, get to a point at the end of the 7 or 8 weeks where they are complete with their grief and they can move forward and actually having the tools that they learn through the grief recovery method, they could apply that to any other loss. So I talked about losses accumulating over your life. You might look back and think, you know what, I'd like to do that one as well, that when I was a kid or whatever. When I did this talk for my church, I shared about my goldfish that died when I was 3. And in that talk, I started crying. And I suddenly realised, wow, I'm grieving over the loss of Goldie, the goldfish. When I was
God, we had that too.
And it was also, it wasn't called Goldie, it's called Turtles. Yeah, and then I've had a really bad worrying about dying, like my whole life as well. But that's unrelated to grief, isn't it?
Well, it's the messages. So if you have a loss, like you lost a goldfish, for example, and then someone said to you, don't be sad, keep it quiet, have some food, do this, do that, but not listen to you, then you're going to go through life thinking it's wrong to grieve. Where the one thing I'd like you to get from tonight is that grief is normal and natural. It's a totally normal and natural response to loss. Not just loss, but change in circumstances of any kind. Moving house, you can miss your old neighbours, your old house, anything you can end up grieving over. And some people say, well, there's some losses are better, not as bad as others. Well, that's not true. To the griever, they can be feeling grief as badly as anybody who maybe lost a loved one or such. But I want to talk about recovery because I'm not just about grief, I'm about recovery. I don't want you to spend your whole life talking about these horrible feelings you have. I want you to finish with them and move on and live a fulfilled life and to be the mother you want to be for your kids, because they deserve it, right? So grief is normal and natural. Don't anybody tell you it isn't. So a bit about me and what's going on here. I was diagnosed in 1999 with what they call cavernoma. So it's a cluster of blood cells that shouldn't cluster, they should grow like trees. And these clusters are called cavernoma, and I've got them all over my body, but I've got one in the middle of my brain stem. And they tried to take it out and they failed. And it sometimes bleeds, leaks blood. And the area where it is the blood will damage the structures, the nerves that work your body. So I struggle with balance. Obviously I lost half my face now, so they're trying to rebuild me. I lost my eye, I only have half vision now in the eye. And I'm only telling you all this because I suffer loss every day. Every day I wake up, I remember being 28, 29 and being fit and active and going for it. But now I have to accommodate my health. So I experience loss a lot, and it's interesting because the loss, the impact that all the losses I've had in my life, culminating in this loss now and others since then, have added up to a tremendous anxiety in me. And it's not, I don't worry too much, but it's physical. It's gone into my body, so I can't walk easily. I have the carinoma issue, but I also have a lot of anxiety in my body, in my arms and my legs, and this is the impact that grief can have. So more people need to know that you can recover from grief. And I'm working hard on myself through the grief recovery method. I've had some great relief recently and I'll continue to do that, and I have great hopes that I'll be anxiety free. In fact, throughout life, anyone's life, there are 40 identified losses that someone can suffer and have grief as a result of. So there's a very high chance that everyone in this room has suffered a loss of that kind. If you're here because you lost a loved one, then I can't imagine how you feel. All I can say is that you will never ever forget your loved one. But those memories, if they currently turn into pain, then you're grieving. And I believe that you can work through that grief, you can recover and remain with those memories, but only the fondness, the good part, the things that you should remember, but not the pain that you feel. So, just skip on here. Can you see my anxiety? Can you see? Oh, that's good.
No.
That's good.
No.
It's there. Awesome. There are too many people that remain trapped in their grief, and the reason is that they've never been taught or told you can change, you can recover from grief. We're told from a very young age that if you're going to be sad, go to your room. If you're going to be sad, have some nice treat to eat. If you're going to cry, go away from me, I don't want to hear you. We're taught from a very early age that sadness is wrong. But grief is a normal and natural response to loss. And everyone suffers loss, so everyone should have the chance to be sad and to express it. And when we're told from an early age to not be sad, it's very confusing, because you feel sad, but your caregiver says, don't sad. You're like, hello, I feel sad. Don't cry, but I feel like crying. It's normal to feel like crying now and again. It's normal to feel sad now and again. So these messages are extremely damaging. One of the things that I think that has really hurt grievers is this, what they call the 5 stages. I don't know if you've heard of an author called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. So she understood the 5 stages you feel when you're diagnosed with a terminal illness. So you're dealing with the idea of your own mortality. Unfortunately, a lot of media and universities have transposed the idea of these stages onto someone suffering with grief. And in her book, she clearly states that this doesn't apply to grievers. This only applies to someone who's been given a terminal illness. And the trouble is that when you tell a griever they should be in a stage, it's very limiting for the griever, because it gives you feeling all sorts, because response to loss are conflicting emotions which you're experiencing, conflict, sometimes joy, sometimes sadness, sometimes pain. and they cannot be pinned down into a stage. And when they are, the griever thinks, well, what stage am I in right now? And that's wrong information. The author who developed the stages never wanted them to be applied to grief. So taking the grief recovery method will bring recovery, and recovery means feeling better. Means feeling better. Means being able to look at life and think life is great, let's get on with it. I've got this last, I have good memories, and now I'm going to move on. It means getting better. And the misinformation that you can't get better as a result of loss has done so much damage, and does so much damage. And most of the damage is done inside our heads because we have the incorrect tools. So I brought some tools in there.
What is he going to do to us?
I'm not going to do it definitely. But the centre manager said, can you, whoever comes on, could you ask them to paint the room? So I thought, well, okay, I'll need some tools then. So I bought some tools with me so that we can paint it. I bought a hammer, and I bought a screwdriver, and I bought a saw.
The wrong tools.
Wrong tools. You're getting it. So yeah, we have been given the wrong tools. For example, has anybody ever told you that time will heal your grief?
Yeah.
Thankful. It's like a kettle. A kettle, you put a kettle full of water over a hot stove, and you put a plug in the top of the spout. Then what's going to happen? Ultimately, the water pressure is going to be such that it'll explode. And that's exactly the same as when you pile grief on top of grief on top of grief and tell someone the time will heal, because they then think, well, I'll wait then. And then some other loss happens. And then some other loss happens. And before you know it, there's not enough time left to deal with all the loss with that we can feel. Time does not heal. The kettle example is perfect for it. It shows it doesn't heal it. Makes it worse. You might learn how to cope and get by, but that's not living. Coping is not living. Doing things that make you feel happy at the moment, getting rid of the pain, that's not living. Living is being content inside, dealing with the ups and the downs of life that come, but dealing with them as a content person, not as someone who's deep down sad anyway.
It's so difficult to deal with like day-to-day stuff when you're, in that space as well. It makes everything like 100 times more difficult.
It's a classic symptom of grief. I'm not a young man, I'm not an old man, but sometimes I can be sitting downstairs and think I need something from upstairs, so it's in my mind and I start going up the stairs, and by the time I got to the top stair, I've forgotten what it was. I went up the stairs to get in the first place. I stand there and think, what was it? I can't think of it, I have to go back down. That is a symptom of grief. There's too much going on in my head for me to be able to live just a normal life. Any of us ever lost a boyfriend or a girlfriend, not lost, but fallen out with. And someone said, don't worry, there's plenty more fish in the sea. Well, that's intellectually true, but it's emotionally barren. And grief is emotion. It's your emotional response to grief. So when you're told you can replace the loss, like maybe you're a child and your golf is tired, and your dad says, okay, I'll buy you another one. And then you're thinking, all I got to do when I feel lost is to replace the loss. You go through life like that, then you end up with quite a dysfunctional life, keeping busy. People say keep busy, and it'll take your mind off it. Well, you can't keep busy all the time. There's got to be down times. When you're sitting alone and you go to sleep, you're not busy. That's when those thoughts will come back to you. Keeping busy doesn't work. Being strong, be strong. Especially if I know a guy, a very good friend of mine, who's he's a close dear friend, and he's my age, so he's not a young man, he's not an old man. So when he was 9, his sister went to hospital for a routine operation, and she never came home. She died in hospital. So there was him, his brother, who's slightly older, then his mum and dad, who were obviously devastated by the loss of their sister. And my friend needed someone to talk to. But of course, mum and dad were dealing with the loss. Brother was dealing with the loss. He had nowhere to go with that loss. So ever since I've known him, probably 20, 30 years, he's taken antidepressants. Almost every year he's upped his dose when the weather gets cold and dark. And I've always thought with this guy a connection to what you went through when you were younger. He went through the grief recovery method about a month, 2 months ago, and I've never seen him smile so much. And it's getting colder now and darker, but he's like, I'm going to get through this, I feel great. Something has to lift it, because he's gone through the grief recovery method, and he also knows that it can reuse the same tools on more and more losses. So when something like that happens in your life, it impacts on everyone around you, and therefore it impacts on your relationship with them. So the first loss he worked on was not his sister, it was his dad. Because the impact it had on his dad affected his relationship with him. And that was a loss. He went through loss. He lost the father that he would have had. So he had to deal with that loss. And that has helped him. And he'll get around to doing his sister. But there's a lot of losses around there that he could work on too and get great relief. And he's changing. So being strong for your family or for others is devastating advice. It does no good at all to help you. And then you obviously will know many more bits of advice yourself. But classically, someone says also don't feel bad. And you're like, but I feel bad. No, don't feel bad. No, but I feel bad.
I know, you're different.
Everything you say is what she does to me.
It's
And she does.
and I am not criticising you.
No, I just don't know what else to say.
You are dealing with this loss just as much as you are.
I know.
Yeah.
And you're dealing with it in the only way you know how. And that's fine. But I hope that tonight and through the method you learn other ways of dealing with it. Okay, so when someone says you don't feel bad, just say, get lost. I want to feel bad. Really well knows that. Or don't cry when you feel like crying. It was terrible advice, as I said, for a child who feels like crying, and a caregiver that they love and respect says don't cry. What do you do with all that emotion? You stuff it down, and it doesn't go away. It affects you forever. And as I say, more and more, and you may have more bits of useless advice yourself. This advice has nothing to do with dealing with the pain that you feel. In fact, I think a lot of the messages, and I'm not criticising, I am exposing, that when we're told these things by the world, it's because the world doesn't want to experience your sadness, doesn't want to hear you be sad. We're in a culture where sadness is not meant to be expressed. So even if you feel you're not allowed to express it, well, in the grief recovery method, you can express it. And it's a recovery method, so you can express it, and by expressing it, it can help you to recover. It feeds in, each week feeds into the following week until you get to the completion at the end of the 7 or 8 weeks that you do. Maybe someone's told you they know how you feel. Well, they can't. No one can. Your grief, your response to loss, is your response. It's unique. And nobody can tell you how you feel, that they feel the same. Now they could say, I felt this way when similar happened to me. But they can't tell you that they know how you feel. No one knows how you feel when you suffer, when you experience loss. All the griever wants is a safe place to sit and express. And Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of coming to terms with death, personally, One of them is denial. And so you imagine attaching that stage to a griever. I've never met a griever that doesn't want to tell me all about their loss. That's the first thing, they want to get it off their chest. They want to talk. There's no such thing as denial in grief. That's how it gets so damaging when it's put in. Grievers need a listener who will actively listen. Okay, crazy term. It means that you won't speak. You'll respond empathically. You may feel, you may laugh at a story, you may cry at something, but you're not there to analyse or fix or judge the way someone feels. You're there to be a listener for that person. That's what a griever needs. I've told the story about my goldfish. We have in the course pet loss course. Now you might wonder why we have a separate pet loss course. Well, some people, unfortunately, who lose a pet don't want to be in the same group with someone who lost this fast. But actually, the grief is the same. But sometimes people think, oh, I don't feel valued to be in a group like that. So we started to do a separate course for people that suffered pet loss. It's never only a pet. I have another close friend who lost his dog 2 or 3 months ago, and I think he cried for about 2 months. He was devastated.
That's like that big goldfish.
I'm working out him as well. So maybe you're religious, and someone says, well, they've gone to a better place. Well, that might be true if you believe that, but it doesn't really help you, does it? When you've got a lot of pain, it doesn't take the pain away. It's intellectually true, but it's emotionally barren. Don't be angry with God. Well, I know the Bible quite well, and there's lots of angry people towards God. It's okay, God can cope with your anger. He can deal with it. What we need to do is start thinking about the way loss really affects us. As soon as we're born, we suffer loss. We're right up in that warm, safe space, food on top, haven't got to think about everything, and then you're born into this cold, bright place. You've already suffered a loss. Now, I don't know how much a baby would think about that, but when you think about what they go through, that's a huge change in their circumstances. So you suffer loss from day one, and as you grow, we suffer more and more losses. It's like being born with a backpack, a rucksack. I'm English, and I moved to Scotland about 20 years ago, and I realised something. Everyone has got a backpack, everyone. And I realised that you have 4 seasons in one day, so you have to have a backpack with everything in to get you through. But anyway, you're born with a rucksack on your back, and the losses go in. It's empty, weighs nothing, but the losses go in. And as they go in, maybe there's little ones, and then maybe there's a bigger one, maybe there's a huge one, and all these losses get put into your backpack over and over, and it gets heavier and heavier and heavier until something gives. Something has to give. We are not storage tanks, we are processing plants. So when we suffer this emotional pain, that grief, and we keep it inside us, we're acting like a storage tank. We're not designed to carry that pain. We're designed to process that pain. So we're processing plants, and if we do store it, then just like the kettle, we end up with something giving. You know, I'm not sitting here saying that depression or anxiety or other physical symptoms or mental illnesses are all down to grief. But I do know that doctors will tell you that a quarter of their of people that come to see them, the root of why they come to see them is they have just suffered a loss. And so many doctors will prescribe pills. That person has just lost their wife or husband and it comes out to the doctors. Doctors, take this, they'll make you better. And all it does is it hides the pain. The pain doesn't go away, it hides the pain. We're having an epidemic. There's many people are addicted to antidepressants, painkillers, and I'm saying that I don't think a lot of people that do have them need them. I think what they need to do is to be heard, be listened to, be allowed to express. And I'm not having go at doctors because they are super busy. I get a 10-minute appointment and I need a lot longer than that for my situation, but there you go. So I'm not blaming them at all. So a survey once asked grievers to decide which comments were most helpful to them. And they all recorded 141 comments that they heard in response to their loss that they'd just experienced. And out of 141, can you guess how many were useful? Out of 141 comments, did they say were useful to them?
One?
Actually, no, it's not that bad. No, it's 19. But if you think 19 out of 141, that's a whole lot of rubbish coming out, trying to help grievers. Now, I say rubbish, that's all they know. That's the only thing they feel they can do. So comments like, you'll be fine, I know how you feel, or you shouldn't still be feeling that way. You should be over it by now. What was that about? That hurts even just saying that. Look on the bright side, at least they're in a better place. Don't feel bad, his suffering is over. Well, yeah, it might be, but mine's not, I'm still suffering. Don't be angry with God, you're still young. I heard someone advise a father who had lost a child. Now, he had other children. The advice was, don't worry, you've got other children.
That's awful. I know.
Just horrible, horrible. And it's not their fault. They're trying to cope with this situation. And I'm really excited about the method because it gives the tools to effectively help with recovery from grief. If you lost a dog or a cat and someone said to you, it's just a pet, just drives me mad. You're telling them, don't tell me outside you're a bad pet. Well, grief is felt 100% by the griever. You can't compare grief. Anybody's grief, you can't compare. Each one feels it their own way. So our response to loss is an emotional response, and the intellectual comments do nothing to help the griever. Telling them to be alone or to be quiet or to be busy or to replace the loss. When all they want to do is to be heard. All they want to do is talk. So I think that society today has begun acknowledging the impact of mental illness a lot more, and I say hallelujah, that's amazing. But it's got a long way to go. There's a realisation that mental health is all part of a person's wellness and well-being, and that's absolutely right. But it's a long way from understanding that someone who's sad just needs to talk, and all you need to do is listen and feel the sadness, because we're all born with the ability to be empathic. But we're so not used to use our empathy muscles that they're quite small, so we might need to work on those muscles as a society. So lots of facilities. The kettle example is helpful with that. I'm going to turn 2 pages over. I printed this out earlier and I went through it and I thought there's something missing, and my printer had missed a whole page, I thought, I know it went out of paper, it was suffering with grief. So I went and listened to it, and then it was all right. You know, the other thing we do, when we're told not to feel sad, and we are sad, what do we do with the pain? Well, what we call it in the grief recovery method is short-term energy relieving behaviours. And the idea is that when you suffer a loss, there's a tremendous amount of emotional energy within you. And when you're told not to be sad, not to be emotional, there's all the energy. What you can do with it? Well, often we turn to things that aren't that good for us to help us deal with the things, the pain. Has anyone ever heard of retail therapy? I hate shopping, but my wife loves shopping, so I do wonder what's going on there. But retail is not therapy. Retail is just take your mind off it for an hour, whatever. And the pain does come back, and so often it comes back with a vengeance. It comes back feeling worse than before you initially forgot about it. So you might understand, you might know what a stirb is. Some people call them coping strategies. As a counsellor, that's what I would call them. But in the grief recovery method, we identify its unused energy. Used, well, I've got to survive somehow, what do I do? Well, you might use drugs, you might use shopping, you might use alcohol, you might use sex. There's all sorts of ways that you deal with the pain to get some relief from it. And so I'll talk a little bit more about this, but I've got to part 2, so I'm going to have a break. But what I want you to know is that it's normal and natural to feel the way you do. Don't anyone tell you, or don't ever believe anyone that tells you that it's not. It is. And being told that puts you in a really awkward place because you feel it and you're not allowed to express it. People with unresolved grief that are still living with the pain of a loss alter their life choices going forward. So you can imagine if you had a romantic breakup that was horrible and you're unresolved with that loss, then you're going to go forward a bit more cagey about relationships. In fact, you might not be that nice a person that you were once, so that you don't give too much of yourself away to someone new. Grief affects the way you move forward in life. It affects negatively the choices that you make. Dealing with grief is such an important issue because it hurts us and it hurts society as well. It has an impact on the society we live in.